Things have become unbearable. The cost of living, I mean. Inflation has been hitting the roofs. Economy, it's obviously in crisis, whether we admit it or not. It does appear that there is some subtle admission that the IMF may have to come in and police how we revive the economy. So how are you coping with the ever-rising cost of living? Fuel prices go up. Almost everything is beginning to cost twice or more the price only a few months ago. How are you coping? State funds are being used so far as much as 200 million used to fund a personal pledge of the president to his God to build him a cathedral if he helped him to be successful in the elections. This is being done in life-taking flooding city. How much has been committed to resolving the flood so far since the Akufo-Addo administration took over the reins of government? Is it any close to 200 million? Well, the cathedral is his priority of priorities. Questions are being asked. So just how much of the public funds are being committed to the project? No answers so far. But as we learn from the Secretariat of the Cathedral, it is not just a personal pledge. We should ignore that it was said earlier that state funds will not be channeled into it. We should ignore that later that was amended to say that the states will take care of funding the preparatory phase and providing land. It is a state project, and the state will fund it in partnership with the church. We'll get your reactions as we host our guests to discuss these issues. Has parliamentary approval been sought for the money being spent? That question remains unanswered. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. Welcome to Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. And here is Samson's take. Don't make mockery of the RTI law. President Akufo-Addo was spot on when he declared that the Right to Information Act 2019, Act 989, was the mother of all anti-corruption laws. The 1992 Constitution, Article 21, commanded its passage. Strangely, however, it took some 2 decades of vigorous, sustained campaigns to get it passed. It was not handed to the people by the benevolence of a government. Citizens forced its passage. The the politicians disregarded the Constitution's command for over 2 decades and did everything to ensure it will remain only a bill in one parliament after the other. They do not deserve the praise they seek for the RTI law. In fact, it was nearly botched in Mike Oquay's 7th Parliament, the same way it was sabotaged in the 11th hour in Doa Jaho's 6th Parliament. Even the MPs who disliked it rightly interpreted the public anger and lack of patience, speaking in support of it, but only when the cameras were on them. Some kept quiet while working at it grudgingly. Katie Hammond was candid to openly oppose it, insisting RTI will burden government and leave it with no secrets. He wants a government of secrets. I own a full compilation of parliamentary debates on the bill from the very start to finish. By our Constitution, it is a fundamental human right. This means we are not merely entitled and given by the state, but we are entitled to it, public information, as a matter of our natural God-given birthright as humans. The CDD, GII, and RTI coalition, doing the very final push, got me to join the forefront, making presentations, interacting with MPs, and literally forcing and policing their work on the bill every day until it was dusted. I observed mentors and consummate human rights and good governance activists like Akoto Ampao refuse to give up on the campaign despite the years of frustration. The Media Foundation for West Africa, the biggest user of the law so far, mobilized lawyers and RTI experts to go round the country to sensitize journalists and duty bearers on the law. In one session in Tamale, participating office holders realized and admitted the law will rather get their constituents better informed to support them to succeed. They spoke about how it will curb the situation where wrong information and half-truths are told to destroy them and their institutions. The Information Ministry worked to ensure hundreds of information officers were recruited and trained for a smooth implementation of the law. An RTI commission that has demonstrated admirable fidelity to the law has been robust in enforcing compliance, sanctioning institutions like the police, fire service, and the Minerals Commission for frustrating people from accessing information. Please do not make a mockery of the struggle and beautiful project the way the Council of State has sought to do. Its Director of Finance and Administration, who elected to perform the function of information officer, delivered information requested by Metro TV with the speed of light, but dishonorably denied Togbi Afede's aid. Same information several days after an official request. Dear Stephen Blay, I'm tempted to conclude you were deliberate in misreading, misinterpreting, and misapplying the rather plain provisions of the law in directing a requester to contact another requester for information sought. The section 21 you quoted means exactly that. if the information requested is already contained in, quote, an official publication. Please mark that. An official publication held by another public institution. Mark that too. Public institution. End quote. Then a requester may be directed to that other public institution to access that official publication. You see, by law, some public institutions like the NCA and the special prosecutor are mandated to make official publications within certain times of the year. If you make a request and the institution is preparing to publish that information within 90 days of receipt of the request, it is only commonsensical that the requester is asked to wait for the publication so that they can access it. That's called deferred access. Some public institutions do proactive rather than reactive disclosure of public information. They have bulletins and other publications. So it is again commonsensical that people are simply directed to the publications containing the information they seek. How is this difficult to understand? The law says if a requester makes the application, give the information if you have it. If you don't have it, give them reasons written why you cannot give them. But if you do and conduct yourself in the manner that you did at the Council of State, what you have done is to deny them information. Stephen Blay, the Council of State is a public institution. The pen you write with is bought by our tax money. The desk you sit on, the computer you use, the meetings you hold are held in our name and on our behalf and for our welfare. Literally, we have employed you. You are our employee, and you must account to us. You are a director. You must be driving in a vehicle we bought. You must be getting fuel coupons from our tax money. You must be sleeping in a house or a room that we paid for. A bed, including a bed sheet that we paid for. You dare not conduct yourself the way you have done. It's most dishonorable. The law says, give it because it belongs to the people, not to you. And guess what? Those public institutions who are misconducting yourselves, it says if the information requested is in the public interest, it must be given free of charge. Mark that, it's in the law, free of charge. And when the information is requested, don't use your own internal laws. Check the law again. It says all other laws regarding information access are subservient to this law. Therefore, that law supersedes all other laws in regarding information request. Please, let's help this democracy to grow if we don't want it to be what many have come to say it is. That is my take. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And let's get to meet our guests for this morning. And our guests are Gottfried Bokwing, Professor of Finance and Economist. He's at the University of Ghana. Dr. Stephen Amwa is MP in Shaiso and MP MP in Shiaiso and member Finance Committee of Parliament. Here in the studio is Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, MP, North Tongue, and Ranking Member Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament. We also have Bright Simmons, Honorary Vice President, Imani Africa, joining us, as well as Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah, Executive Director, National Cathedral Secretariat. So let's begin to look at the issues of bread and butter. Of course, all the issues must be about bread and butter, but it's become very obvious that the twin, world global issues of the pandemic, coronavirus pandemic, and the Ukraine-Russian war is beginning to further devastate and even destroy economies, particularly those that appear not to have been in the best of shape at the beginning of the pandemic. So, inflation, as we understand now, has jumped to 27.6% from the 23.6% recorded in April 2022. According to recent figures from the Ghana Statistical Service, this has been blamed on the increase in transport fares and food prices. According to the government statistician, Professor Kobna Enim, the rate of inflation for transport is at 39.0%, household equipment and maintenance 33.8%, housing, water, gas, electricity 32.3%, food and non-alcoholic beverages 30.3.16% were higher than the national average 27.6%. And in May 2022, 12 of the 13 divisions recorded inflation rates higher than the rolling average from June 2021 to May 2022. Now, as we know, the floods have also been devastating the country, not only in Accra. Outside Accra, it's not been the best. So let's begin to ask the question, as fuel prices are going up even further, what is life going to be like in the coming weeks, days, months? And will this be reversed anytime soon? First, Okudzeto is with us in the studio, so let's have your view of how you appreciate the way things are going now, as far as inflation is concerned.
Well, thank you very much, Samson. Good morning to you, to the panel, and to all our distinguished viewers and listeners across the globe. Difficult times, isn't it? I mean, these are really, really tough times. As a member of parliament, anytime you go to the constituency, anytime you pick your phone, you just have no choice but to really feel for your constituents and feel for the people, people who not too long ago were very comfortable, and will assist even with other social interventions that you are carrying out in your constituency. They are all really now, and savings have run dry. You have a situation where salaries no longer take people home. I mean, a friend was doing an analysis with me a few days ago about how the cost of fuel alone at the end of the month consumes the entire salary that he earns. And so he's even wondering if he shouldn't pack his vehicle. So everybody can feel the bite. And you look at the the stats, and they are not getting any better. This is the worst inflation number in over 2 decades, we are told. And prices of goods and services are up. Everything is going up, except salaries. I was looking at some analysis that Metro TV did yesterday. I was on the set, and they were comparing Ghana with some 14 other countries, and our minimum wage is amongst the lowest. Actually, it was only Gambia and Ethiopia that had a better minimum wage than us, and yet we have the worst inflation, and yet our fuel prices are the highest, on the continent. So we are really in particularly excruciating times, and something must be done, particularly with the cost of fuel. The impression has been created that these are matters that are out of the hands of those who run the economy. I disagree. There are 3 factors when you look at the fuel pricing. You have the world market prices,
right?
Then you have the taxes and levies, and then the third component, it's the exchange rate. So the exchange rate is within our capacity. The managers of the economy who had professed some superior, managerial abilities must bring that to bear and rein in the depreciating currency. Then you come to the taxes and levies, Samson. It's atrocious that we are keeping these 12 taxes and levies. And the last time we did an analysis in Parliament, it was amounting to almost 40% of the price buildup, what you pay at the pump. Energy debt recovery levy, road fund, energy fund levy, price stabilization recovery levy, sanitation and pollution levy, energy sector recovery levy, special petroleum tax, primary distribution margin, bust margin, fuel marking margin, marketers margin, dealers, retailers and operators margin. 12 taxes and levies, 40% of the price buildup. This is where something can be done. This week, we filed a question in Parliament. The Deputy Energy Minister re-echoed what the President told workers on May Day, that they are not in a position to do something about the taxes and levies. We disagree. We are appealing to government. And you see, it's about addressing the expenditure side of things. Government expenditure is still too high. I have been tracking these matters, as you know, in Parliament. And when you see the things that government is spending on, you see what government priority is. You see the size of government. Look, I was comparing President Mahamad's report to Parliament on his 2015, and that's the last report we received from President Mahama on his staffing situation at the Office of the President. He had 5 ministers of state at Appendix A, Appendix B, list of presidential staffers. He had 26 at page 4. I can share them with you. So in all political appointees, he had 31, the record in Parliament. You compare with the current situation, the latest we have from President Akufo-Addo, political appointees, he has 337. So we've moved from 31 to 337. All of these have fiscal implications. So when people say that, how do you expect government to manage if you reduce the taxes? Already we have challenges with meeting government expenditure. Let's go into the expenditure. What are those items we are spending on? Are they necessary? Is that a priority? We'll be coming to the National Cathedral. At this time, should we be continuing with that? I have seen other projects in the budget. For example, I keep talking about the Accra International Conference Center. They want to raise it down, build a new one at 165 million euros. Only this week, they were asking for approval for more loans, about $1 billion, dollars, which we had to, stop in Parliament. So the expenditure side of things must be looked at. Then my final preliminary comment relates to the creative cushioning, social safety nets that we can provide. If you study what other countries are doing, yes, this is a global phenomenon, but countries that are exhibiting superior management of the economy, that are exhibiting more creative thinking, are cushioning their citizens. You go to Hungary, for example, they have creatively placed a cap on all staples, on fuel prices. It cannot go beyond a certain point. And they are subsidizing. You may call it price control.
Yeah.
But it's helping their people and it's cushioning their people. You go to the United Kingdom, they've identified the data is there, they've identified the vulnerable, and they are providing, cash grants to them, to households, between 500 to 2,000 pounds a week, supporting them. So there are examples all over the place about how governments are cushioning, their citizens. In Ghana, it does appear that it was just because the 2020 elections was ahead of us, so we found a way of doing the, free electricity, free water, and offering some food stamps here and there. Once the election was over, that's it. We just rather impose more taxes. So we should be looking at serious cushioning. And what is making this situation even worse is that all of the traditional safety nets that could have even helped ameliorate the plight of the people are all in arrears. LEAP is not really going. Government has not supported LEAP in a long time. You take NAPCO. NAPCO has not been paid for about 8 to 9 months now. So the traditional safety nets are all struggling. Health insurance is in crisis. It's owed over 2 billion cedis. So we have to be careful. You see, this is now an existential threat for this democracy. See what happened in Sri Lanka. The economic crisis we are faced with now has shown that if you do not manage the situation well and you don't step in and offer the people some reprieve, it can undermine your democratic stability, and the people can just rise up, say enough is enough, and just topple the leadership, and that's the end of your democracy. So yes, I see government all over the place about some terrorists coming from outside, some imminent threats and all of that. I think that they should rather pay attention to the current economic crisis, the excruciating hardships, the torture economically that the people are going through. It's just unsustainable. So government should look at the expenditure side of things, reduce expenditure drastically, cut down on all of these prestige projects. They can hold on, and let's channel our resources into cushioning the people. Okay. As for the taxes and levies, these 12 taxes and levies on the petroleum price buildup, there is absolutely no justification to keep them, in these really, really tough times. Okay, and we had some rather lengthy discussions on these taxes that form 40% of the price buildup. Sometime in 2021, we are back to this discussion again. I'm looking at the Ghana Business News, Emmanuel Dogbovi's Ghana Business News, and the headline on November 29, 2021 was, "You pay so much for fuel in Ghana because 40% of price is taxes," and they give the full list. I thought we promised to do something about it. There was a promise to do something about it, but still we are there. Professor Bokwin, and please, viewers and listeners, share with us how you are coping. Share with us how you are coping. Hashtag Newsfile. Those of you normally sending us messages by Twitter, also post them and we'll share them with the rest of the world. How are you coping in the ever-rising cost of living? Prices of goods are just rising. Will they even ever come down? The cost of living in Ghana is getting unbearable, with prices of goods and services increasing by over 26% on the national inflation average. Yes, Professor Bokwin, what will be your first commentary, and
embedded in that, how should the state look to resolving these issues? We have discussed this in the course of the year, and you guys asked for certain measures to be taken, tightening of the belt, so to speak. The president or the finance minister brought out some measures, including stopping unnecessary travels unless, they are statutorily required, taking a pay cut, among other things.
Good morning, Samson.
Good morning.
Good morning to our cherished viewers and listeners across the globe, and good morning to my colleague panelists. Samson, it's interesting. Probably the reason why in this country revising your letter notes means less, because we never really get to address anything structural, meaningful, impactful. I'm sure if we look back so many decades back, you will see these headlines, whether it's flood, whether it's inflation, you will see it. In fact, particularly for Ghana, since we assumed the reign of this country, both in terms of political, physical, monetary, we've never been able to tame inflation. Inflation in 1964 was 0.98%, something. By the end of 1965, inflation had jumped from 0.98% to 26.4%. Look at that within that short period. Over the years, we've gone through structural reforms, even across fiscal side, monetary side, we have struggled. And that is just a symptom of the many aspects of our lives where Ghana has failed. And we are almost heading to the point where we will say Ghana is becoming a failed state. I do recognize that we've made considerable progress since independence. Yes, we can celebrate that. There is so much that we could have done, that we could do, that makes all this discussion in the midst of the abundant resources, human capital that we have. And if you look, to make matters simple and probably understandable, you want to look at the household expenditure disaggregation. And then you look at the drivers of inflation. Samson, you will realize that the average Ghanaian spends the household expenditure on food alone, the data available is around 42.9% on food. So when you see food inflation rising the way we have seen by the data, that is quite worrying, because it tells you the concentration of household expenditure and the impact. Then you want to look at housing, you want to look at transportation, and the rest of them. That said, then you want to look at the layers of taxes. Heavily indirect tax handles. And we have said that there is no way you could guarantee private sector leadership in your economic transformation drive with these burdens on ordinary Ghanaians and the private sector. Samson, if you're an average worker in Ghana and you look at the proportion of your expenditure on food, rent, transportation, and the rest of them, it's practically very difficult to save. You can understand why our savings rate in this country is very low, whilst our investment requirement is high. That gap will then tend to liberalize the environment and make it so conducive to foreign investors to fill the gap in order to realize our economic dream underpinned by the strategy. When it happens that way, it's going to be difficult for the average Ghanaian to actually make significant savings in order to take advantage of even the limited economic opportunity available. When you do the effective tax burden on the average Ghanaian, you look at, I mean, you are in the top end, you pay 25%, assuming you spend 60% of your disposable income on consumption, you look at the layers of taxes. But 12.5%, GET fund, NHL, this, COVID levy, this levy, that levy, and you put everything together, you are hitting in excess of 60%. When you look at all these things, there is no breathing space for the average Ghanaian. It gets worse for those who are on pension and their livelihood is on the strength of the law from SNIT and maybe latter generation tier 2. Because they are on fixed pension and they are impacted much more. Remember, not every Ghanaian who retires at the age of 60 gets ex gratia, regardless of how you describe it and justify it. But the average teacher who teaches for 30 years, he goes home with practically nothing. And I'll share something with you. When I went to my village and I saw this man walking by the road, and he actually was stopping my car. I was wondering where he got that boldness from. When I stopped, Samson, this was my teacher in GSS 1. GSS 1. In fact, when I went to GSS, there were only 2 teachers. So those of us in GSS 1, there was no one taking care of us because they had to handle GSS 2 and then GSS 3. I went to GSS, my biggest problem was how to read. Of course, typical from Ashanti region where they use tree to explain adverb. This man told me he had gone on pension. And when he mentioned the amount to me, I almost wept. The little I could do immediately was to give the malt I was going to take to him and ask him to join me in my car. This is somebody who has labored for over 30 years. Maybe this was just by the way. Does it look like we are getting out of this now? The answer is no. The reason I'm saying so, Samson, is that we have austerity staring on our face. And physical consolidation, either we do it under an IMF program or the measures we impose on ourselves, tells you that the fiscal consolidation we are implementing requires some adjustment costs that will be borne by the citizens, oftentimes unevenly distributed, heavily against the poor, marginalized, socially excluded. The inflation you are talking about, 27.6%, Samson, yours may be higher than that. Mine could be lower than that, just as an example.
Yeah.
Because it varies from region to region, it varies from district to district, it varies from an individual to another individual, because your consumption pattern will have a different inflation from my consumption pattern, from the Honorable Samuel Okujeto, and I mean, yeah, so it varies. Somebody's own could be probably in the 40s. But of course, because we are actually not taking the survey from all the markets, how about the online shopping market and the rest of them? This is how challenging it is. To put matters within perspective, you want to look at this within our peers, and I think you mentioned that, which is very useful. The only caveat is that for Francophone countries, the comparison may not be that straightforward because the pass-through of exchange rate to inflation may be a bit mute for them compared to Ghana, because they use the Francophone CFA akin to the euro, so the depreciation is not that strong as compared to Ghana that operates flexible, managed flexible exchange rate mechanism. But of course, you can compare Ghana to Kenya, you can compare Ghana to Nigeria and other countries. And then you see the variation in the price build-up. When you put all these things together, it will be unique to outsource all of this to just external factors. When COVID came, we did analysis and we said that, in fact, food nutrition started deteriorating from Ghana and West Africa broadly from 2014. You can check the data. The conclusion was that Africa Ghana, for that matter, must prioritize agricultural spending. Okay, link that to agribusiness and industrialization as an effective response to COVID-19, because it was just a matter of time, and hunger, food malnutrition will kill more people than the virus itself. Of course, our president told us that we should eat kontomire and other things. Maybe that was the time we should have started planting more kontomire. How do you eat it when it is not available? So far, the best feedback for government flagship program is what we are discussing right now. Planting for food and jobs. Samson, where is the food and where are the jobs? It is factors and drivers like this that reveals the resilience of your policy and your economy. So when macro global level, the impact is pervasive. We are not here to deny that. But the resilience of your economy is shown in times like this. And that is why you see variations in the level of exposure and price development between Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Kenya, and other countries. You see, when it happens that way, then you realize how global level development is actually meeting local reality and magnifies the vulnerabilities that we have used words to explain. But now, your words against the reality, now it's no longer a multiple choice, so that people choose what they like. Because the reality is in front of everyone, regardless of your political affiliation.
Prof, given that we have a debt burden that is swallowing us, so to speak, do you see that we will get out of this situation anytime soon, and how?
Yes, Samson, we are not getting out of this anytime soon. And that is not to make Ghanaians sad. The reason we are saying so, you are looking at the current measures embedded in the 2022 budget and the enhanced measures, and then you can do the forecast and the prediction, both in terms of your debt sustainability drive and then many other things. And Samson, it doesn't look that good. You know what? We don't need to be diplomatic about this, because the real effect of that can never be explained through jargons. Let me put it this way. See, if you look at the budget right now, and even the enhanced budgets, there is practically no space for growth enhancing spending that would inure to the common good. It doesn't. Look, and the problem should never be and can never be solely because we are not generating a lot of revenue, but it has more to do with expenditure. And I like it when the Honorable in the studio gave the statistics, right? They are in Parliament. Of course, they should help us perform that kind of check and the rest of them effectively. We've seen this across the two main political parties, so we can talk about them objectively, okay? We can share the guilt and all of the proportionately or disproportionately in whatever form. But that's where we find ourselves. But here is the government saying they are not going for an IMF program or whatever. But the point, Samson, is that there is no program right now from the side of government that we can put side by side with an IMF program that says that this is far better with trackable objectives underpinned by certain reforms, and see whether government has a political will to impose that necessary fiscal discipline on itself. The lack of transparency and disclosure, even with the enhanced measures that government announced and all of that, itself doesn't help market confidence. When was the last time we received an update from the Ministry of Finance on all those enhanced measures? And the savings to be accumulated from there, where are they? How are they being applied? Where are we now, middle of June, with respect to government announced measures in the face of the problems, debt sustainability, revenue drive, expenditure reduction, rationalization, and the rest of them? Where are we? Honorable quoted government size from the central government presidency. Something, it may interest you to know the expansionary drive of other state-owned enterprises in terms of number of people they are absorbing. Even these are not profitable state-owned enterprises. You can talk about Tor. Look at the size, the growth in the size of the payroll. Look at GNPC. Look at Ghana Gas. For some of them, they have to provide land free once a day, probably on borrowed money.
Okay.
If we continue like this, we will be unique to expect a different outcome.
Let me get to Dr. Stephen Amoah. Thank you for joining us, Doc.
Thank you, boss.
Right. I'm looking at thankfully, and I'm happy we have you. Thankfully, the New Crusading Guide online, for example, reported this week about a seminar that you were one of the key speakers. And the heading of the story is Dr. Stephen Amoah discovers formula to raise Ghana from economic doldrums. The introduction says, investment consultant and member of parliament for Inshiaso constituency in the Ashanti region, Dr. Stephen Amoah has come through works of notable economic theorists and has discovered a most suitable formula that could raise Ghana out of its current economic doldrums. According to him, who is a member of the Finance Committee in Parliament, the challenges confronting the country now are that, one, the higher the risk, the higher expected returns in the investment principles of risk and return is being undermined continuously, unquote. And that his formula, which was published, which has been published and developed in 2020, integrates all the relevant variables and gives conditions and recommendations to enable banks and portfolio managers to reduce risk of industry collapse. Then you mention a few other things. Let me add this paragraph. It says, speaking at a day's seminar at the International Conference Center in Accra on Monday to a packed to capacity audience, both local and global economists themed identifying and redefining the economic fundamentals of developing economics, anomalies and challenges. The case of Ghana. Dr. Stephen Amoah assured that his organization, Financial Economic Seminar Ghana, is not ending with the seminar, but is going to work hard with stakeholder engagement, especially the Bank of Ghana, the banking industry, AGI, GUTA, the Finance Ministry, and other relevant policy bodies to see to ensuring that Ghana becomes a global icon. What exactly is this solution that you are proffering to get this country out of the current circumstances that we find ourselves? It's a global situation, except that we are worse.
Thank you very much, and my regards to Prof. and Honorable Kujatu and our viewers this morning. Thank you for this opportunity. Samson, I think I have quite a Herculean task this morning because professionally we have issues that probably I should speak with all the needed professional ethics. And also, once I have my brother Okujatu making statements that also to me or which have impact or cut some sort of snare on my government's performance, definitely I can't go without doing the two. So just allow me, I beg, just respectfully. I think my work in summary was as a result of most of the issues that Prof raised. These are issues that for about 40 years, Prof quoted 1964, 1965, inflationary rate from about 0.9, if I heard him correct, to about 26.4 or 26, just a year later, 26. And I also want to make this clear. I think publications from our media houses sometimes cannot entirely represent the meaning of what we say. We all know that. So let's be also careful that not all publications out of a statement, a work done, that can be taken in its entirety. So if there's any other thing, anybody can ask me, then we'll go ahead and discuss, because I know the country in which we are. But going straight to the issue, you realize that from most of the things Prof said, Ghana, we have problems that for about 40 years, in my opinion, we keep on lamenting and trying to ponder over, trying to find solutions, and they linger on, and a small push elsewhere on somebody's market or in somebody's market, it puts us in a very turbulent situation. And not until all of us are honestly get involved in making sure that this has been a ritual, cultural thing we don't need. They are dysfunctional. And as a result, as a country, we need to stop politicization in a way at a point, which I think MPP and this, we can all be faulted or whatever, and find everlasting solution to some of these. Some will not work out. And I think, one, my work came as a result of the fact that I realized that most governments on our market, many a time, or most of the times, borrow on our domestic market at a higher interest rate than even the private sector, which of course constitute the risky assets. Anybody can give whatever reason the person wants to give. If this is not the prevailing trails or issues or incidents we see in well-developed economies and efficient markets, ours seem to be anomalous, and we need to find solutions to it. Because I hear people are saying government is there, this one is happening. There could be genuine reason, but the fact is what is happening is affecting us. And practically, what we need to know is that without any technical explanation, if government securities or assets that are classified risk-free are being seen to give investors higher returns, definitely banks automatically will prefer investing in government securities. As I'm talking to you now, between 57 and 70% of bank investment, whatever, goes into the government sector. Government does not actually create value chains, expand them, add segments that can employ people. That will mean that private sector will always have big issues in getting adequate funds to expand and produce what we need, aggregate demand on our market. So we will be forced at all times, doesn't matter who is in government, we'll be forced to import from outside. And once we import from outside something, we are going to have the ritual or ritually weak currencies that we have all the time. And that is why I say that any attempt, no matter who is in charge or who has the power or whatever, who wants to speak, it doesn't matter how good you are, short-term approaches to solving currency issues in any country, especially, characteristically, we have import-driven economy that in your studio today, and where in my house and everywhere, about 90% of things we use, we import. So you can never ever say that these are not issues. Two, the private sector that actually creates value chains cannot expand enough to employ people. So we are going to have ritually high rate of unemployment in our society. And these are the issues. And even to me, because the figures do not really fall within the principles of simple risk and return in investment, even valuation of banks that are integrated in our GDP computation can be challenged. So these are practical issues. I've spoken to almost all the banks guys in this country, the top ones, and they have accepted the fact that yes, what I'm saying is 100%. Of course, they have issues. The private sector has to position itself, and they are giving reasons why, which I understand. But if there are reasons or not, this is a serious issue we should go through. So it made me, as part of my work, try to simulate the existing models in the world. Capital asset pricing model by a gentleman called Sharp in 1964. And then an improved version was done, that was 1976, by a gentleman called Ross. And then later on, the two that were done were the optimal ones, seem to be probably most acceptable ones. Two gentlemen, Hanan and Lian, that was 1993. And then 2015, Diamond did. They all improved upon what happened. Then I identified that the last one that was done did not integrate the fact that after deduction of reserve component of bank funds available, part goes into market and part goes into risky investment areas where risk premium was needed. Based on that, I developed a new model. But something coming back to all the issues we are talking about, it's the fact that the things, especially my brother Okujoto is talking about, is very interesting. If we are talking about the fact that our minimum wage is probably too low comparatively, if we are not really getting staff to people that we are supposed to get, and comparing that to other countries, we can't do that in isolation. In the first place, have we compared all relevant variables in terms of even the pro-poor policies that are being rolled in our country, i.e. free school, i.e. LEAP, i.e. national health insurance policies, i.e. School feeding, and all those things?
So,
have we sat down?
So, Dr. Amwa, the solution you proffer, and I take note of the fact that I've looked at the videos and how the International Conference Center was packed and the caliber of people that were there to listen to you and a couple of, experts from outside the country, and the debate it generated among the Guta, Professor Stephen Adair, and the rest of them. The main point is that because the country is import-driven, we will continue to be in this problem. Number two, that the banks, for example, are making supernormal profits from the state, and which is an anomaly that must be cured. So how do we get out of this stranglehold? How do we get out of it?
I think anything that I'm proposing now, just as I've had a proposed formula of model, it's not something I've worked on and I can say 100%. But of course, I'm making recommendations. And I think how we can solve some of these problems cannot just sit there and say, within a twinkle of an eye or 1 week or 1 day, solve it. Just as most of the problems we are lamenting today, we cannot look at them today and say, hey, especially when we're going through. I think we need to work on how we manage our fiscal space. Because governments are also forced to go for loans simply because we are operating a completely negative effective tax rate system. I mean, monies outlaid from government to households against income or revenue of the government, excluding debt. It's negative all the time. Let's be very practical with these facts. Let's not deceive ourselves. Because I always say the Samson, I'm not holy, but there's God in whatever we do. Let's be very honest and take away, if we want to do politics, we can do proper comparative analysis. And I will tell you that then my government is even doing well. Because look, US today, since 1981, which is 41 years now, they are having the highest inflation rate, 18.4. Some parts in US, you are not even getting baby food. Some parts you don't get fertilizer. These are facts. I'm not saying because of the Ghana we should be happy. There's hardship in Ghana, we appreciate. But what I'm saying is that these problems needs holistic approach involving all stakeholders. And before we need to be realistic with how we manage even our fiscal space in terms of revenue we are generating, in terms of our outlays, and even discretionary spending arm of policy arm of the government too. Governments should work towards Ghana getting to single-digit interest rate by making sure that this anomaly is resolved. Because if risk-free assets, or even if governments, in our jurisdiction, we don't want to classify that which is against the global principle, which we cannot, is borrowing now as I'm talking to you now, T-bill rate is ranging between 20 and 24%. The bank's rate between 9 and 11. I mean, the industry average. Check the difference. Who will give his money to the private sector? So we need to take the bull by its horn, try to review our regulatory framework and policy framework, and also go through the market forces that determine some of these rates. There could be cartel, there could be probably, how do I put this word, like condoning system or something that probably we might not have known. But whatever it is something we need to solve.
My very final question to you, Steve, will be...
Then you end me or I have the chance to talk.
We have to end the show at a point. So my final question to you is, you are in government.
Like 1 minute or 2 minutes.
You are in government. You are on the finance committee. We know that you participate in discussions about, the economic management of the country somewhat. Fiscal space management is a government responsibility.
Sure.
So, who are you preaching to now?
if you ask this question, you are right, but it sounds like I'm doing a blame game. I'm not blaming anyone. This is a national issue. The problem we are having today, any honest person will tell you, is not today's issue. It's been with us years. So I'm preaching to every stakeholder who has what it takes to come on board, and let us all make sure that, such as what I'm doing today to help, whether it's good or bad, everybody knows what I'm trying to do. Professor talking, Samuel Kujeto talking, you yourself, my brother from Imani coming to talk. Sometimes we get it wrong and right. We are all helping. Yes, if you tell me at present, it's on the government. And I don't think the government is sleeping. The fact is, if you have 40-year-old problems, if we sit there and our population size has grown from Nkrumah's time from about 5 million to about 31 million, if you have a situation where just close to 7% directly the formal sector pay taxes, and we're having negative effective tax rate, and these problems have been compounded for years, the government alone, of course, there are basic issues we need to check. One, our discretionary spending arm as a government. We should be able to now go there, even though the government said, oh, we cut down by 20%. Yes, well accepted, appreciated, but we can do more.
Okay.
We can do more by selecting the expenditure items, find out which of them have very weak correlation with our GDP, and throw them away and cut them. Look, let me give you this practical example.
Sorry, Dr. Stephen Amoah. Okay, please finish up in a minute.
But sometimes I have problems. I'm being professional, and there's also politics. So what do I do? Because my brother did politics. Anyway, because you want me to finish.
You have been speaking for over 13 minutes now. Do 1 minute and let's take a break.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I want to say to my brother Okujeto and those listening to us is that if we continue doing politics, then all the things, look at petroleum taxes. Let's find out whose regime we put most of them on. Well, most of them, if we want to really talk about that. So I am saying that let us shift our focus from politics, all right, and try to find solution as you're asking. But the fact of the matter is that today's problem, of course, we all know, just before the COVID, I'm not saying we're not having issues, where the situations like this. Let's find out. They were not like this. But most of the problems you're having today, in my opinion, are almost century-old problems that we need to sit down and redefine our corporate focus before we can find a very lasting solution to it.
Thank you so very much. Professor Bonkwe, I need just a minute from you to conclude, and then I'll go for a break and return to continue with the other discussions. So, Professor Bonkwe, in a minute, what will be your concluding comments?
Thank you very much, Samson. Clearly, we cannot throw our hands in the air. Government has to provide some kind of response. The more we delay this, I don't think that it will be in our best interest. Samson, the reason I'm saying so is that even before what we are talking about today, between 2009 and 2020, over 3.6 million Ghanaians were food insecure, did not have access to affordable food and nutritious food at all times, and it's getting worse. More than half of the Ghanaian population are poor, living on less than $5.5 per the international poverty line. It doesn't have to get worse than this. So, and I believe that something, when we say so, we say government doesn't have fiscal space. Let's look at expenditure.
All right.
And that has to be comprehensive, and there has to be disclosure and greater transparency in that space.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Godfred Bokwing is Professor of Finance and Economist. He's at the University of Ghana. Dr. Stephen Amoah is MP in Shaiso and member Finance Committee of Parliament. We will break here and return shortly to begin with the discussion on the matters arising from the Cathedral and questions of accounting. And Bright Simmons joins us. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Little Tete says that the rapid rise in oil and therefore fuel cost is causing headaches. Prices are skyrocketing every day. What I am doing differently is to be still, because this too shall pass. It is difficult, yes, but we won't steal or cheat people to be rich. God will come through for us. E.L.'s Wood says, my transportation to work and back home is 12 Ghana cedis. Now I use a bicycle instead. 72 Ghana cedis bagged a week. Mr. Winnie says, I play 1:0:1 tactics to survive. Mamara 90 says, I am beginning to practice truancy. I go to work 3 out of 5 days. I can't buy fuel continuously. Who are you working for? Joe Till says, everything is affected from tax to e-levy. All we are hoping for is the next meal. And then he says to us, is the next meal. Tax salaries still get electronic charges. So yeah, cheers. I had an experience in the course of the week. I went to Cape Coast, court in Cape Coast, and on my return, I stopped to buy Kenke, Fanti Kenke, by the roadside. I was paying the woman. I bought, 30 cedis worth, or was it 40 cedis worth? And then I had to pay with Momo because I didn't have cash. I made a mistake and I paid 400 instead of 40 cedis. So I moved away a bit and discovered I had overpaid. So I called and asked for a refund. So I get a refund, then she tells me that she must make a deduction before she sends me the refund. And I told her, I got this deduction when I sent the money. So I then saw the situation. If you are sending the same money back and forth, it will be exhausted without you actually spending it. E-levy. Yeah. King Rash says, I remember the Agric minister in one of his comments said, there is excess food in our market. Why the abnormal increase in food prices? Why is it that some of our leaders are taking Ghanaians for granted? And finally, Shay Idrisu, says, each day you wake up in Ghana, you get demoralized to move on because things are getting worse each day. Yet people we voted for, are living luxuriously and defending the indefensible. Ghana will crash at a point, like they will say in Nigeria, Tafiakwa. God forbid. Now let's go to the matter of the cathedral. And as you know, the Secretariat has issued a statement clarifying some matters and making it clear to us that the state is at the forefront of the cathedral. So I want to begin the cathedral discussions, and the cathedral discussions were resurrected as a result of Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa asking that monies that have been paid have not been approved by Parliament. As we understand now, the National Cathedral, the total cost will be $350 million. That is 2.8 billion. How is it going to be funded? The Finance Minister in the 2019 budget, he said, Mr. Speaker, the state is facilitating this process by providing the land, the Secretariat, and seed money for the preparatory phase. End quote. This will not burden the ordinary taxpayer. Then he gave the big assurance. He said, Mr. Speaker, the President is determined that the building of the National Cathedral will not put undue financial burdens on the state. He has therefore proposed a partnership between the state and the Ghanaian Christian community, both at home and in the diaspora. End quote. Funds released by the Finance Ministry so far, seed money, 25 million United States dollars. That is 200 million Ghana cedis. Mr. Okudzeto has been asking questions. The project has stalled, contractors haven't been paid, owners of demolished properties haven't been compensated, among other issues. The compensation amount of 6.5 million has still not been paid to one of the affected persons or entities, that is Waterstone Realty Limited. There was an entity there, Waterstone Realty. Their compensation was for 6.5 million. That has not been paid. The company has served notice on the government of Ghana since the 4th of November 2021 that it will go to court. There are other developments in that regard. Dr. Kwabena Opuni Frimpong, in 2017, he is with the process. He said, our understanding of this National Cathedral, we have had a discussion. He said they had this conversations with the Minister for Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs, Kofi Jamesi, and my understanding is that it is the churches that are going to build this National Cathedral. And that's a quotation from him. He said, trustees must come forward on the release of the 200 million by the Finance Ministry. So now we know the trustees working through the Secretariat have issued a 7-page document. I read it last night. I don't know if you have the opportunity to read all of that. Let's begin the discussion with Bright Simmons. He will spend a bit of time to make a presentation regarding his perspective on the issues. Bright, thank you very much once again for making time to join us. I know that you are constrained at this time, but you agreed to join us on this subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Samson, for inviting me. And with your permission, I will just go right into a presentation just because it helps me organize my thoughts on what is a fairly elaborate subject. I think this is a very intriguing subject. And while all of us will have different views because we share different faiths, we have different politics, the truth is, from a policy point of view, we can make some very emphatic comments about this National Cathedral matter. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, purely from a policy angle, we have to look at how has the government managed the process. That should be forefront. Even if we are supporters of the government, even if we are strong Christians and believe that the cathedral has spiritual significance that will transform our society, we still have to ask, given that the government has been very instrumental in trying to get this cathedral built, has the government done its work properly? I think we can have that kind of conversation regardless of our politics. And if we're all honest and decent people, nobody can dispute that what has happened is incredible in terms of the sheer confusion that has characterized this project. And understand that somebody from the Secretariat will be joining us to help us make sense of some of the complicated, shambolic, confusionist situations that we find ourselves in as far as the National Cathedral is concerned. I'm going to try and summarize the position of the civil society group that I represent, that part of civil society that is focused on good governance and policy, good policy management in this country. And so you have to bear with me as I kind of systematically walk you through the way our thinking has been shaped. First of all, we have to start with the value proposition. Why is Ghana building a national cathedral? And when we look at that value proposition, we have to situate it in context. And the first context is that if you wanted things that Ghana doesn't have, things that will add value to people's lives, things that will add value to their national life, to even our spiritual life, will you go for a cathedral? That's a question that we don't think the government has answered well enough. The reason being that there are a lot of cathedrals in Ghana. There are about 40 traditional cathedrals, and per last count, more than 120 cathedral scale Christian worship centers. That is churches or temples or synagogues or whatever you call them, that are the scale of a cathedral. So of the things we don't have, even if you agree that the cathedral is a great thing in and of itself, you have to ask yourself whether we need one more cathedral. The second thing that is also important is when we look at our religious spectrum, and there's a part of our religious spectrum that really has strong connections with our lives as indigenous Ghanaians and as Africans. And that part of our religious lives has seen no support from the state whatsoever. Think of Komfanochi's birthplace, whether in Okugwa or if you go to Aguna, and think of the famous palm tree on which he was supposed to have climbed without sandals, with sandals. Think of all the spiritual sites connected to the Koli Lagoon, the Sakumono Lagoon, and the rest. These are indigenous aspects of our belief system. And while you may be Christian, while some of the guests on this show may be Christian, there are significant numbers of Ghanaians who believe in these traditional religions. And if you are a tourist, you probably will be coming to Ghana to see the Sakumono Shrine. If it was properly designed to be tourist friendly, then you'll be coming to see another Christian cathedral, when the Catholic Church alone has 1,800 plus minor basilicas around the world. So we have to ask ourselves that question, whether indeed, from an additionality point of view, an extra cathedral is what we need. Then there is also this massive confusion about categories. They are calling it a cathedral, which is really bizarre, because a cathedral is a technical term. A cathedral is the seat of a bishop. It is only those churches that have episcopal hierarchies, the Anglicans, the Methodists, and the rest of them, they use the term cathedral with a very specific meaning, typically as the seat of a diocesan bishop. And sometimes you may have suffragan bishops in some cathedrals, but typically the bishop, whether a metropolitan bishop or the bishop of some high rank, will be in the cathedral. Is the suggestion that we're going to have a national bishop? Because that's a very important point if we're going to try and convince people that this is a cathedral. So first of all, it is not a cathedral. It's not a cathedral because we don't accept, given the context, that any of the churches that are episcopal in this country have custodianship over the cathedral, or the proposed cathedral, inverted commas. It's not the Catholics, it's not the Anglicans, it's not the Methodists. It's supposed to be some kind of ecumenical interdenominational center. But interdenominational centers worldwide are never called cathedrals. Nobody will be able to point to me a single ecumenical or interdenominational worship center called a cathedral anywhere in the world. In fact, one of the closest things we have in Africa to what we are trying to do is what the Nigerians did some time ago. And that is extraordinarily interesting and prescriptive and, shall I say, it's exhortative for us. We can learn a lot from what happened in Nigeria in the way that they went about building what people call the National Church. But it's actually the real name of it is the National Christian Center. So this ecumenical center, which was an attempt by multiple Christian sects to have a common location, like the way we have with chaplaincies in the military and things like that, it started in 1989. And the Christian dominations were responsible for funding it, which a lot of people don't know. So if you go to Nigeria and you see the so-called National Church, it was not built by the state or funded by the state. In fact, from 1989 to 2004, it languished because they could not find the money. And then the government decided that it will put some, not resources, it will put some impetus behind it by the president of the country becoming the national treasurer as a means of mobilization. And then the Christian denominations mobilized resources to the tune of 3 billion naira, which today will be less than $30 million, to build that beautiful edifice you see in Abuja by 2005. The government did not put a single cent in it, but it's also not a cathedral because it's an ecumenical center or interdenominational center. So this is a very important lesson. One of the challenges we have with the way government sometimes runs Ghana, and we've had it with successive government, but I think with this government it's becoming quite problematic. There is almost no effort in advance of building these policies, to engage widely with a view of making the policy better. We're not saying that engage civil society, engage research institutions, engage think tanks because they are smarter than the people that you have in government. We are saying that because people you have in government have similar interests, and sometimes the nature of politics is such that people have to show loyalty. They are not always able to tell you things as they are. So what happens is that we don't do enough research, we don't have any real policy documents. When issues arise, we get confused. People are running helter-skelter because where is the policy document back in the cathedral? With whom have they shared it with? Who are the people that are not already convinced by it, who have been engaged so that they can share ideas about how they could have done this better? So in simple terms, the Nigerian National Church, whose real and appropriate name is the National Christian Center, was not funded by the state. And this is a pattern that you see all over the world. So I've heard people say, oh, we have national cathedrals around the world and the rest of it. Two major points. A national cathedral is not the same as a kind of interdenominational or ecumenical center. A national cathedral would typically be run by an episcopal church, like the Anglicans, like the Catholics, like the Methodists, churches that have episcopal hierarchies, where there are bishops and there are suffragan bishops, diocesan bishops, etc. That's an important point. The second point is that it's almost never built by the government. And I'll walk you through a number of the popular ones that have come up in the debate. So you take the US Washington National Cathedral. What most people don't know is that it's an Anglican church. In the US, it's called an Episcopal church because the Anglican church in the US, that's how it's called. And this church, or this cathedral, is actually an Anglican cathedral. Its real name is the Cathedral of St. Paul and St. Peter. So the fact that it's often called, branded the National Cathedral, doesn't mean that the government of the United States went to find money and pumped it into it. The Christian community and ordinary people in the United States who love it for its history contribute. And it cost them about $65 million in today's money to build that with no government money whatsoever. Notre Dame has also often been mentioned as the National Cathedral of France. It's a Catholic cathedral. The Catholics ran it. They have custodianship. If you go to Jerusalem, you go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, you find out that the Greek Orthodox have custodianship in different places, or some of the different nativity sites. You have the Russian Orthodox, etc. So typically you have these custodianship, and then they are responsible for finding the money to put into it. The Israeli government doesn't fund the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It's not that, that's not how it works. In fact, Notre Dame was recently burnt down, and resources had to be found to restore it. If you've noticed, all the $790 million have come from corporate and private donations. Not a single penny, cent, dollar of government of France money has gone into Notre Dame because it's a Catholic cathedral. It may be the National Cathedral of France, the most impressive mother church of France, but that doesn't mean that you have to put government money in it necessarily. St. Paul Cathedral in Britain cost about $230 million. Interesting funding model. Special tariff on coal brought into the port of London is how they funded the cathedral. You will say, well, that is almost quasi-government. Well, the truth is that at that time, Anglicanism was the established church of England. What that means is that they had a national religion. And the head of state was also the governor of the church. And therefore, in that regard, if the City of London, with the approval of Parliament, decide to place a special tariff on coal imports into London to pay for it, it's understandable. But even so, it was not ordinary people's taxes in the consolidated funds or the treasury, as they call it in Britain, that went into paying for St. Paul. You can think of Denmark, which is another religion, where the national religion is the Lutheran religion. And this is a Protestant country. And there also, you have very important churches like the Church of Our Lady, which is often considered the mother church in Copenhagen and the national church. And it is not funded by the public. It is funded by the church. In fact, so much so that even though it's also a listed tourist site, and a lot of people visit Our Lady, the Church of Our Lady, when they have damages, sometimes due to the pressure brought on it by tourists, the government insists that payment is done by the church, because it's the church property. So we have to be very clear in terms of the way we understand these concepts of national cathedral. First of all, if you have a national cathedral, properly speaking, then either you have an established church in the country, so there's an established religion, as in the case of the United Kingdom, where Anglicanism is the established religion and the head of state is the supreme governor of the church, or in some instances, you have the cathedral of an existing Christian denomination, like the Catholics or the Anglicans, and then it gets co-opted by Brandon to be the national cathedral. It is similar in the case that we have in Russia, where you have an established religion, the Russian Orthodox Church, and St. Basil Cathedral was therefore built for that purpose by Ivan the Terrible. In that regard, you have no problems. Where you have an ecumenical church or an ecumenical worship center, that cannot really be a cathedral, that cannot really be funded by the public, but it's purported to be a national cathedral, in complete conflation of the terminology. But on top of that also, in complete contrast with how it is usually done all over the world, there's a challenge. The second big problem that we have from a policy management point of view is the way that we've gone about the procurement process. And I think Honorable Okudzeto has said a lot about this already, so I'll just highlight on the keynotes. First of all, typically, you have a very strict scheduling of the way that the fees are paid at different stages. And for some, apart from the schematic designs, which you know will often start with, most of the other elements will continue for many months, and in some cases for many years. Like some of the construction documents that you generate, you don't generate them at once, because as you develop lighting, as you develop plumbing, a whole bunch of developments emerge and you produce construction documents and the rest of it. We are quite surprised to learn that huge amounts of money is being given to Sir David Adjaye upfront. On top of that, the amount of money that he's charged from the documents that we have now, about $22 million, which was nearly 10% of project cost, is monstrous. Look at the median survey data. Remember that this is the data you are looking on the screen now is survey data. What that means is that the Royal Institute for Architecture in the United Kingdom, RIBA, goes around and asks architects and collects data on what fees they are charging. Sir David Adjaye's studio is primarily UK based. So I'm using RIBA data. That is the regulatory authority there. That is the professional association there. And they go around and find out what architects typically charge. What you realize is that as the scale of the project increases, the percentage reduces, because it's natural. If I'm going to do a $10 billion project, I don't have to pay $1 billion to architect. Okay. That makes no sense. So that scaling dynamic means, therefore, that the average percentage for project costs that you typically find in the United Kingdom is about 3.5%. We have a situation where we're paying, and that's for design and build. We are paying not just design, to be very clear. We are paying almost 10% to Sir David Adjaye for this exercise that he's undertaking on behalf of the country. And nobody doubts his competence, nobody doubts his talent, but this is inflationary pricing, which we must talk about. If we were to bring it down to Ghana, we say, okay, well, he's based in the UK, but now he has a studio in Accra, he has a studio in London. What is the UK, the Ghanaian guidance when it comes to architectural fees? And here also, I find it shocking that we will be breaching the Ghana Institute of Architects fee structure, which is around 4%. So we're going to about 10%. What is it about, say, the Adjaye that means that we must pay so much when the project scale is such that typically we need to be compliant with guidance? Because it's a big project, so he's making a lot of money. So that's a challenge. Architectural design fees should be about 1%. We've paid $6 million, that's like as much as more than 6% of the project cost, and that is like 5 times or more what the guidance will suggest for just the schematic diagrams and the early concepts, and that is problematic. The other thing we have a challenge with is this new pattern whereby the government is consistently single sourcing large projects to a single architect. It's unusual. We've not had it in this country. We've not seen that. What has all of a sudden changed? We appreciate the fact that Sir David Adjaye is a global architect of international renown, but he's been practicing for years. Since 2000, he's been famous around the world. Why is it that all of a sudden in 2020 or 2018, 2019 onwards, we are seeing massive projects being awarded to him without design competition? Whereas where he traditionally operates, look at the number of projects that he's done in Africa, maybe less than 5% of his entire portfolio. So he operates primarily internationally. And in those places, it's almost always the case that there's a design competition. How can we award the Ghana Trade Fair Center a $1.something billion project, suggesting that if we're going to keep paying him at the rate we are paying him, it's about $100 million project? We decided to do the Ghana Freedom Pavilion in the Biennale in Venice for the first time in 2019, and we went for him. And we're going to pay a huge amount of money. We're going to spend more than $1 billion on Agenda 111. If we use the same scaling fee scales that we've noted that he's been applying, we're going to pay him about $100 million. By the time we are through, we would have paid a single architect more than $300 million as a country. Somebody has to ask some questions. And if we argue that, well, he's a renowned architect and therefore we like his work, why doesn't he compete then? Because then it will be evident that on top of the fact that he's a globally renowned architect, his links to Ghana, his ties to Ghana will also play to his advantage compared to other international architects. But the benefit is that it will bring down the pricing because these are inflated prices. And we are paying huge amount of money to the gentleman. As I've said, we have immense regard for his talent. We have immense regard for his competence. But the way in which the country's money is being funneled, to his studio raises eyebrows. And I think they said that the J himself would not begrudge us the feelings that we are having that something off is happening. People have also raised concerns about seeming connections to the first family. Of course, some of these matters are difficult to pin down, but we realize that in the Biennale installation, for instance, that he made for Ghana, first time Ghana spent millions of dollars in the Biennale, by the way. We've been going to the Biennale for years. Typically, it's very modest. Artists go themselves. El Anachu and all of our artists have been going for years without any fanfare. This time, we decided to build a massive installation, and we have Nana Oforiatta Ayim and Sir David J paid to set up this pavilion. Now, these are both artists of global renown and of international caliber. I don't dispute that. And it's perhaps entirely coincidental that two of our most distinguished artists will collaborate. The challenge is that Nana Oforiatta Ayim is the cousin to the president. The fact of the matter is that in a very short period of time since the coming into office of this president, hundreds of millions of dollars of projects have been awarded to a single architect, even if everything was above board. And we have suggested that the way in which the procurement was done through single sourcing, without tendering, without design competitions, without any effort to be transparent, those are problematic. But even if we assume them away, we wish them away, even if we wish them away and say, look, all of this is above board, it still raises too many eyebrows, too many coincidences colliding with each other that gives us cause for concern. Then we go into the issue around the return on investment. We've been challenged to accept and to embrace this, because one of the things that will happen is tourists will come to Ghana. In fact, I was stunned reading the report, the press release by the Cathedral Secretariat, suggesting that there are 600 million Christians in Africa, and they expect 10% of them to come to Ghana. That is 60 million tourists. No country in the world gets 60 million tourists on religious grounds alone. In fact, some of the best countries in the world for tourism get 60 million tourists in total, like France. So to expect that you have 60 million Christians from Africa come to look at a cathedral is problematic. But why are we not so hopeful that we will attract the millions of tourists who will pay entry fees to cover the cost? First of all, people go into cathedrals primarily for two reasons. One is the history and art. So if you go to the Duomo in Florence, that is one of the, when we had the Grand Dukes of Tuscany, that was the national church in that part of Italy, in that region of Italy, in Tuscany. And you will find that it has a precious museum with incredibly valuable artifacts dating back hundreds and hundreds of years, some of them into Roman times. There's history that will take you months to consume. People go to the Duomo for that reason. People go to Notre Dame for that reason, the history, the art. The second is the religious. So there are two main reasons you may want to go to a cathedral for religious purposes: relics or reliquaries. Typically, some of the faithful believe that either the body parts or clothing that a saint or a very holy person wore has spiritual or miraculous powers. And most of the cathedrals in the world store them. So you will go to a place like the Duomo, and they will tell you that they have
We have a little challenge with Bright Simmons' presentation. He was just concluding, and we'll get him back and patiently allow him to conclude in just a couple of minutes. So you've just been listening to Bright Simmons, Honorary Vice President, Imani Africa, provoking you in a very special way, I think, because I feel provoked by some of the statements that he makes. We are joined by Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah, Executive Director of the National Cathedral Secretariat. Thank you very much for making the time to join us, sir.
Thank you.
Right.
Good to be here.
This show, as always, is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go, Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa, Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Waylead Properties, Home is Where One Starts, and Farnet, Ghana. Think wood, think Farnet. Also, if you're looking for the best furniture designs, Farnet Ghana is where to get that. Okay, so whilst we wait to correct Bright's situation and get back, I'd like us to hear Samuel Okudzeto, particularly on the back of the statement that the Secretariat has issued. Has he come to a point of amending some of his positions, or nothing has changed? Yes.
Well, thank you, Samson. I'm sorry to disappoint you that nothing has changed, really. More questions have even arisen after reading the 7-page statement from the National Cathedral Secretariat. And let me say good morning to Dr. Poku Mensah, who has joined us. I must make a preliminary observation that I honestly do not take it kindly the way you situate your statement when you conclude by saying that this historic and game-changing project, the National Cathedral of Ghana, deserves a more elevated national conversation on its nature, funding, and relevance than has been the case so far. Honestly, that is a diplomatic way of saying that so far this conversation has not really focused on the germane issues, or are not elevated, to use your own words. I totally disagree. And you see, we need to get one thing clear. We are using public funds. We are saying that belatedly, though, this is a national project. A national project will require a collective buy-in, that we all come on board. So our mindset, our posture, our orientation will have to be different. Please don't create the impression that you do not welcome accountability and that you do not want transparency to be the hallmark of this project. Because so far, these qualities have been in great deficit. Accountability, transparency, being forthright with the Ghanaian people. So please, I do not think that the Christian Council, which is asking you to come clean, CSOs, you've seen Odadia Bright Simmons's, brilliant exposition, journalists, anti-corruption crusaders, all of us who are asking relevant questions. It is an elevated discussion. We are focused on what matters. It is our taxes, and it is important that the National Cathedral Secretariat does not, as it were, assume a posture that
do you take into account the premise for making that conclusion that this historic and game-changing project, the National Cathedral of Ghana, deserves a more elevated national conversation on its nature, funding, and relevance than has been the case so far? The premise is that throughout the 65 years of our nationhood, a number of long-term infrastructural projects have been discussed without the dispassionate analysis of cost and long-term value. So why are we attacking the National Cathedral in the manner we are doing when, in 65 years, long-term infrastructural projects in this country have not been discussed in that manner? That's the premise, or you don't get that? You don't buy that?
I do not buy it. And you see, as Christians, let's be minded, Colossians 4:6. Our responses at all times must be full of grace, well seasoned with salt. We should know how to approach everybody who has perspectives on issues. That's what the Bible teaches us. So I just thought that
I'm coming.
I begin with that point. But I'll need some time to go into the issues because you have provided a detailed response. Point one, private project or public project. After so many years, we are hearing for the first time, and I've been in Parliament throughout this project. I'm in my third term now. This is the first time we are hearing that this is a national project. You have incorporated it under the Companies Act on July 18, 2019. This is fresh information. Information that all of us have not known. And you admit in your own statement, page 2, paragraph 2, that of the 3 reasons, and the 3 reasons you gave is that gesture of thanksgiving, number 2, symbol of Christian presence and contributions to the nation, number 3, a personal pledge to God. Then you say that of these 3 reasons, the personal pledge came to be associated with the cathedral as private project that needed to be developed without state support. That association came from you. I have here statements from members of your board of trustees.
Okay. So I'll do this. Sorry for that interruption. Bright has just a few minutes to finish up his presentation. We have rectified the situation.
That's fine.
So Bright, thank you very much for rejoining us. Can we get the conclusion? Hello, Bright. Please unmute your mic.
Samson, you are muted, so I have not heard anything that is done on the studio.
We can hear you. We can hear you now. We can hear you now. Please proceed and make the conclusion.
Okay, I'm not sure where I understand you had some technical difficulty, and so some part of my talk was unheard. So I don't know where I got disengaged. I understand it was where I was talking about pilgrims.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sorry, can you please repeat that?
Exactly, that's where you were, about the fact that we cannot be expecting the 60 million of tourists.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'll proceed to share my screen then. Apologies for this.
Yeah, I think it's not from your end.
Yes. I think it's loading up now. Are you able to see?
And Bright is going to continue and finish up on the presentation because we didn't want to leave that conclusion hanging so that we can return to the studio, have Okujeto Ablakwa do his, and then thankfully, we have the Executive Director of the National Cathedral of Ghana, Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah, here in the studio to assist us so that we have the full picture. If there are questions to be directed at him, this time we have the opportunity to ask him directly the questions that we may have bothering our minds about this. This program is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneur leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Waylead Properties, home is where one starts. And Fanat, that's Fanat Ghana. Think wood, think Fanat. Yes, so Bright, let's hear you.
Okay, sorry. What I was trying to explain was that people will typically visit cathedrals for 2 main reasons. One, historical and artistic, and the other, spiritual.
Right.
So in respect of historical and artistic, you can think of a famous museum like the Duomo in Florence, that in those days when it was ruled by the Grand Dukes of Tuscany, that was what you might consider the equivalent of a national cathedral. And if you go into the Duomo today, there's a whole museum that will show you antiquities dating to Roman times, to Greek times, to show you the evolution of Christianity in Florence, all the way back to medieval and early Christian times. People will go because those things are precious. You can't find them anywhere else. The other reason it might be because there are instances where miracles have been associated with religious sites, particularly Christians' religious sites. And in those instances where Mary has appeared,
I guess I'm done with
apparitions and things like that, people will go there because they believe that those places are holy places.
I'll talk again.
Sometimes you will find instances where there will be relics, parts of the body or parts of the clothing of a holy person or a saint in the cathedral. And those reasons, though, if you go to a place like the Duomo in Florence that I mentioned earlier, they believe that the finger of John the Baptist is kept in a reliquary, and people that want healing and things like that will go there for that purpose. So if we're thinking about a national museum, a national cathedral in Ghana, which has none of these virtues, because it's starting up in 2022, it has no comparison whatsoever to say the Action Chapel, that is run by Archbishop Duncan Williams as the founding site of charismaticism in Ghana, or Our Lady of Sorrows in Navrongo, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Why then would somebody go to a cathedral built in 2022? There has to be a reason. And some of the reasons they've been mentioned doesn't really add up, like there's a restaurant there and things like that. There are restaurants everywhere in Ghana. So the only thing that we've heard, which is interesting because it does suggest that there is a plan to attract tourists of a high quality and a high caliber to pay for it as well, is the museum idea. But then the thing with the museum is that you need to have a collection. You have to buy antiquities to put in the museum for people to come. And the cost of these antiquities are massive. And Renaissance painting alone can cost you $100 and something million, right? So let's say we're even buying, cheaper items, but still of some historical value. We can easily spend $250 million just on the collection for the museum. We've not even budgeted for that. We've budgeted for the construction of the cathedral and its interior furnishings. And when you look at the project plan that has currently been circulated, it's quite clear that we will need money for the museum itself. Now, we were looking into this and we said, okay, maybe they have a plan for it because it's very essential. And we realized that one of the people very connected intimately to this museum and who is not a subject, whose involvement is not a subject of request for information filings in Ghana, is a certain charismatic who has strong relationships with the Museum of the Bible, owned by a certain entrepreneur called Steve Green. And we know that the Museum of the National Cathedral Secretariat has been having conversations with this Museum of the Bible in the United States in terms of collaboration around the Bible Museum. The challenge that we've noted is that this is also a museum that has been flagged for some really frightening problems. In one instance, they had to come out and acknowledge that they have been displaying fake Dead Sea Scrolls for quite a while. And at one point, they had to admit that they had found a way to smuggle out really precious cuneiform from Iraq, for the Epic of Gilgamesh, for instance. So these are problematic issues which require investigation. Now, my point is that if all of these matters were, in the public, transparent, there was a plan, there was, documents that have been written and shared, this is what we intend to do, we want to partner on the Bible and the rest, people like us who have an interest will have shared with the public and, of course, with the government and the National Cathedral Secretariat and the rest of it, our concerns, some of those will have been dealt with and will have had a much more robust strategy. But if you go and do these things on the quiet, it's not clear how exactly you intend to raise money to build a collection for the museum, where the money is come from and things like that. You gain a reputation for shadiness, especially when you are dealing with organizations that themselves are the subject of lawsuits and criminal inquiries about their conduct and things like that. The last point, which I think is fundamental to the challenges we are having with the cathedral, is the role of the trustees. The trustees, as we now understand, have also been constituted into the board of directors of the National Cathedral Project, which is incorporated as an entity limited by guarantee. So, standard corporate governance 101, there's a body corporate. Now, a body corporate of this nature must take its own decisions. The board of directors cannot be overridden merely because shareholders wishes something to happen. It will have to happen through the process of the board of directors, either because the representatives of the shareholders vote for it or something like that. So when we have the president of the country, the presidency, the office of the president, being responsible for procurement for an entity that is incorporated in its own state and that has its own corporate personality, its own legal personality, it gets very worrying. What are their graces, the archbishops on that board of trustees saying about this wanton disregard for corporate governance rules in terms of how this will happen? The documents sent to the Public Procurement Authority should have been under the hand and the seal of the board of trustees or their executive management. Under no circumstance should the president be the one handling procurement. For a cathedral, a project that has been constituted as its own entity, so money can go into it and accounting can be done at the level of that entity. We find these problems really, really frightening. We think that the shambolic nature in which this whole affair has been handled does not give credit to the government's policy management machinery. And it's time for their graces, the archbishops, who are on the board of trustees and also at the board of directors, to put their feet down, take control of the affairs, or resign if they feel that these matters are happening on their blind side. It should not be the case that though they have fiduciary responsibility, they have the duty of care, duty of loyalty, duty of obedience, etc., they are still not completely in charge. These are matters that we feel in civil society are extremely problematic, and we wish that better answers be provided than what has currently been put in the public domain by the Secretariat, purporting to answer questions. But as you will yourself acknowledge, Samson, none of the questions that we've raised today are answered by that document that you read last night.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Bryce Simmons. So, Sam, you are proceeding on a certain tangent, and I'll allow you time to do so. But could you start? Yes, Bryce, thank you. Could you start?
Samson.
Yes.
Is it possible to ask Bright just one question?
Is that Stephen Amwa?
Yes.
Sticker, hold on for me. So, tell me, can you start from where he ended? Yes. Says none of the questions asked so far have been answered by the 7-page press statement. Yes. Is that truth for you?
Absolutely.
Which are these questions that have not been answered?
Question 1. Article 178 of the Constitution, which is so fundamental. Parliamentary approval was not sought before releases were made to this project. And we have put out 3 documents so far, amounting to about 200 million Ghana cedis. We have put out the first 25 million Ghana cedis, dated 31st of March 2022, signed by the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, Minister for Finance, which is a warrant to the Comptroller and Accountant General to release that sum of money. You won't find it in the 2022 budget. We have also released documents from 2021, 32 million Ghana cedis paid to Sir David Ajay. You won't find that in the 2021 budget. We have again released a warrant for 142.7 million Ghana cedis. That is $25 million. Right. That was to the Secretariat. So the 25 million Ghana cedis was to Ribade Construction Company Limited. The 32 million Ghana cedis was to Sir David Ajay. The 142.7 million Ghana cedis was to your Secretariat. Released on the 29th of October, 2020. Again, you don't find that anywhere in the 2020 budget. I have here all the budgets of President Akufo-Addo from 2017 to 2022. You do not find that. We have also been raising procurement questions. The role of Sir David Ajay. Bryce Simmons has talked about what is wrong with the office of the president usurping the role of the board of trustees and purporting to be carrying out procurement. If you read the letter that we put out, the letter sent to the letter from the Public Procurement Authority, signed by ABAJ, the chief executive, on 17 December 2018. I read from the second paragraph. At the Board Technical Committee meeting number 20-020-2018 held on Thursday, 13 December 2018, the board granted approval to Office of the President in accordance with Section 72(5)(b) of Act 663 as amended to engage Messrs. David Ajayi and Associates as lead consultant construction and supervision for the construction of the National Christian Cathedral at a total cost of $23.75 million. Now, when you pay regard to Section 72(5)(b) of the Procurement Law, Act 663, a copy of which I have here, 72(5)(3) provides the procurement entity may select consultants by inviting proposals from a single consultant where there is, you make reference to B, an emergency as specified in Section 41(b) and C. When you go to Section 41(b), this cannot apply. Section 41(b) says that a procurement entity may engage a single source procurement under Section 41 with the approval of the board. B says, where there is an urgent need for the goods, works, or services and engaging in tender proceedings or any other method of procurement is impractical due to unforeseeable circumstances, giving rise to the urgency, which is not the result of dilatory conduct on the part of the procurement entity. How does this apply? It cannot apply. That is why we have been raising issues about the procurement breaches, all the legal infractions associated to this. And this is the lost project, as we have been told. So you expect that there will be utmost fidelity to the law, to the Constitution. That is not being observed.
Who defines what is urgent? You say it doesn't qualify because it cannot be said to be urgent.
Yes.
Who
there's no urgency, there's no emergency. The law defines them. It defines those circumstances. This is a personal pledge the president made to God. He had time. He's won his elections. He's constituted a board in 2017. There is so much time. From 2017, he cut the sword. He even announced, when you read the finance minister's speech to parliament, they put out their timetable. From paragraph 157, Mr. Speaker, the president is determined that the building of the National Cathedral would not put undue financial burdens on the state. He has therefore proposed a partnership between the state and the Ghanaian Christian community, both at home and in the diaspora. The formal launch of this national fundraising campaign is slated for December 28, 2018 in Ghana and February 2019 in the United States. What's the emergency about this? What is the urgency? Has there been any national catastrophe associated to this project? None whatsoever. So these provisions of the procurement law being relied upon is just, I mean, with all due respect, I mean, unacceptable. Let me just use those words. Then let's come to the partnership components. Again, we are not seeing candor. We are not seeing sincerity. You say at page 2 of your release that within the partnership, the role of the state has been specified as follows. Appointment of the architect and design team. 2, the land and its preparation. 3, setting up and equipping the secretariat. And 4, seed money. A major plank that has been omitted is the compensation. Many properties have been demolished. And so far, the cost, we have been putting together the cost of this compensation. This week, we put out documents from Waterstone Realty Limited. We owe them about $6.5 million. I have here the letter the Honorable John Peter Mewu wrote to them May 30th, 2018. Chief Executive Officer, Waterstone Realty Ghana Limited. Dear sir, proposed site for the National Cathedral project. The President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in conjunction with the leaders of the Christian community, has initiated a process with plans for advance to construct a national cathedral for the state of Ghana. The proposed site for the National Cathedral is a 6.323 hectares. Being an occupant of a portion of the said land, which will be affected by the construction, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources wishes to engage you towards a smooth relocation of your outfit. You move in, you demolish this property, the people ask for more time. They had bought this land for $2.5 million. They've employed over 100 people, and these are up-market luxury apartments. They were making profits of about 2 million Ghana cedis a month. You demolish all of that. This is their letter, 4th June 2018, asking for more time. You said no, you don't have more time. They have to move out. You went ahead, demolished. It took you 2 good years to identify some property that you said they could go and occupy. The Lands Commission on the 12th of August 2020 allocated land.
In this case, when
company.
you say it took you, I think you should be speaking to the government.
Yes, yes, to the government. It took the government 2 years to offer them 1.26 acres, which was even less than what you demolished. You demolished 1.6 acres, property on 1.6 acres of land. Will you believe, Samson, that since 12 August 2020, they can't have access, they can't take possession? There are people in there who say that they work for national security. The Lands Commission can't tell them what to do. They are not moving out. Now they have served notice. They are going to court. And they are going to compound the 4-year losses. You are not talking about that. Something, let me reveal for the first time, and I know this will interest you. You know the Judicial Training Institute was demolished.
Of course.
Do you know how much it's going to cost Ghana to replace that? Let me reveal for the first time, $50 million. That's what the Judicial Service has put together. Their plan.
Is it just the institute or the buildings for the Court of Appeal judges that were also taking about 12 or so of them?
No, this is just the institute. We've talked about the bungalows. That's a separate matter. Because remember that when the bungalows were demolished,
there was renting for them.
There was renting for them, $5,000 a month, and then we are now constructing for them. They've even lost land because of that, because they had to negotiate with a private developer to take half of their land, and so you develop the other portion, and then the private developer takes over that portion of the land. So that's a separate matter. The Judicial Training Institute is going to cost us $50 million. The Chief Justice has been negotiating with the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development. Those negotiations have broken down. The ECOWAS Bank has walked away. They are not really interested. They have now opened talks with the World Bank. $50 million. At today's exchange, that is in excess of 370 million Ghana cedis. So when you tell us that the role of the state is just appointment of the architect and design team, which by the way is fresh information, it was not contained in any of the budget documents, land and lease preparation, setting up and equipping the secretariat and seed money, you are not being particularly candid. The government continues with this opacity and the lack of full disclosure that has attended upon this project. Then you see, in your statement, I think that you are taking up some responsibilities. There was this IT company. I don't know if it's the same as the realty. No, that's
company.
That's another one.
This IT company that we understood, was within the property, and it was hosting sensitive and expensive IT infrastructure for many state entities, including the Bank of Ghana, SEPS, SNET, CSD, the GSE, and GRA. And we understood, were also demanding in the millions of dollars for their relocation. So if they are also different.
Yes, no, that's different. You're right. And I know them. What government has done so far is just to get them a place to relocate. But they are waiting for financial compensation. So you need to add all of that. So by the time we compute, so this company, which is Comsys, I hope they don't mind I reveal their identity. Then you have Waterstone Realty. Then you have Judicial Service now looking for a $50 million loan. that will be a burden on the Ghanaian taxpayer. We haven't talked about the Malian government relocation, because the Malian ambassador's residence was in that enclave. We signed an agreement with them. Please bear with us. We have to demolish. We would relocate you to Airport Residential. The cost of the land at Airport Residential, which government has just bought for them, but they are waiting for the construction of the ambassador's residence. You need to add that as well. The relocation of the judges, the cost of the construction of a permanent bungalow, then passport office. It costs us 10 million Ghana cedis to relocate the passport office. So why is government not coming clean? That is why I agree with the council.
You said you have been doing something. What rough figure do you have? How much will it cost the state to relocate all of these entities?
This relocations is in the region of $100 million so far. So far.
Okay.
And it may even,
but you cannot be putting that on the secretariat, because as far as they are concerned, they were simply waiting to receive land. Once they are giving the land, then they will be giving the seed money for the preparatory state phase of the project. So
no, but
we cannot be asking them questions about that, right?
No, Samson, no, I disagree. They are telling us in this statement the role of the state. So do full disclosure. Come clean. Why are you leaving out the demolition compensation of those demolished properties?
Yes, please. You speak.
It has to be stated. That's the full role. And you see, they've been going on about this lack of disclosure for too long. Something, do you know, when you read the Supreme Court judgment, which they make reference to, the 23rd January 2019 case in the James Kwabena Bonfe matter, I have a copy here. You even misled the eminent judges. The judges said here at page 19, we take note that the government has maintained a consistent theme about the unifying effects of the National Cathedral on Ghanaian Christians. So far, its contribution is to provide land for the cathedral and the actual construction to be sponsored and financed by the churches. Even the judges were misled. So everybody is being misled in this matter, and it has to stop. Now, something. I must come to.
No, I want us to hear him on the issues you have raised.
No, this point is important.
Raise that one. Add it.
The Mensa Otabil issue. I am disappointed at the lack of candor, my brother. Look,
he excused himself at the point of registration. That's all they are saying. He didn't resign, and that he has been available, giving valuable advice.
You're going to compel me to see. You see, you know that we know too much about this project.
Anything. I went to Mutual.
But you know that. Right. You know that. You didn't give your board of trustees appointment letters. You know that.
Continue, I'm listening.
You didn't give them appointment letters. You called them by phone from the office of the president to be part of this. So you don't expect Dr. Mensa Otabil to resign in writing. There was no appointment letter.
No, what are you saying? But I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
What I'm saying is clear. So he doesn't need to give you any resignation letter when you didn't give him an appointment letter. That point must be emphasized. Now, in your own statement, you said, so Dr. Mensa Otabil did not resign from the board as being alleged, but excused himself at the point of registration of the directors in July 2019. For the avoidance of all doubt, Dr. Otabil has not been a member of the board of trustees since July 2019.
Right.
You are simply confirming what I put out last week on the probe. This is a confirmation. I don't see
but I think there's an aspect of that has to be said, that Dr. Otabil was brought in to give an impression that because of the difficulties that the project encountered, he did not want to be associated with it. So if we get to know that since 2019 he had excused himself, then it tells a bit of a different story.
You are talking about,
right?
No, but we made a point, and if you go back, you can go back to the tape. I said that he's not been a member for more than 2 years. I said that. That's what I put.
Okay, thank you. Now, Sammy, if you can hold on there for us.
And when we raised it, you see, we were talking about that. You see, the lack of sincerity, the lack of transparency. You had him here. I have a printout from the website. You had him there all this while for more than 2 years. And you yourself say, that you selected these people not by institutional representation, but people with influence and visibility.
His picture, his name has been taken down from their website. So I think that's also a problem.
I thought that Dr. Poku-Mensah would have just admitted, to just say that, the continual use of his name and pictures on their website and publicity was an administrative lapse by the secretary.
You can explain it.
Okay.
It was.
Yeah, but...
All right, thank you. Thank you. So, Doc, yes, like I said, thankfully you are here.
Okay, thank you.
Before, you have been compelled to issue a 7-page statement.
Right.
First of all, do you think sincerely that you ought to have waited until that? Because people have just been asking questions, including, do you know how much the state is contributing?
I think, first I'm happy to be here. I think you've been able to make a Newsfile one of the very good ones. You have to listen, partly by your intellect and sheer force of your personality. So. Also, let me begin with the posture, the issue of the posture in the 7-page. Actually, I wanted to release this almost to dampen what I felt was quite a rising temperature. So the posture I really took, and really that's what you kind of brought out in the conclusion, was that as a country, we've gone through these periods where critical national infrastructure come up. And the same issues, we almost sometimes bastardize this thing. And some of the issues that are being addressed are critical, really procedural issues. We don't want to trivialize them. But at the same time, I think part of my concern was that most of these discussions do not also bring into consideration the impact, the long-term impact of the project. So it really becomes almost a whole national conversation on procedures. It is legitimate, they are legal. I'm not trivializing, that is his role as a parliamentarian. And I think one of the things we've been able to do as a country, there are very few countries in Africa that has been able to do that. We've created this substantive uncertainty that democratic theorists will tell you is critical for political accountability. That any day we have elections, we can replace a government. And we've really been able to have this vibrant opposition that keeps the government on its toes. I think we are one of the few countries who don't even celebrate it enough. and kind of in a major part thanks to people like Honorable Ablakwa, who really keeps this accountability at the heart of our democracy. So first, congratulations for the consistency. And we don't quarrel with you on really trying to live up to your parliamentary obligations. But should I have waited for this? I think, when is the right time to issue? I felt this was the right time, partly because, the National Cathedral was almost kind of brought into the public domain. Quite a lot of noise about it, excitement. And so even the space, to say, look, who actually should be doing the talking was almost a space you had to compete for. So I think the timing was right, I think, to really begin almost rationalizing the conversations. The National Cathedral brings quite a lot of emotions for different reasons. For those who think in a secular state, the state should have nothing at all to do with religion. For those who think that, look, no matter what, there are almost some sacred spaces that one should be buildings and others that one shouldn't. So it's really raised quite a lot. And sometimes you almost have to let the conversation go on to a stage where now you can come in and start this process of almost rationalizing. I think.
How does the Secretariat feel when the finance minister or the government is being asked that you didn't come to Parliament to ask for approval specific for this amount you're spending?
Right.
And you hear the government hedging, or anytime they give a response, it is to say, look, get off our backs. What is it? We decide to spend. We are spending money from the presidency's budget. So what are you talking about? How do you feel
I think we'll get there. I think the finance minister talking point last week indicated that, look, if there are issues of procedural issues that have been breached, they'll resolve them. I mean, I think the key issue for us is really that this idea that somehow there's this grand agenda to deceive the nation. I mean, I think that's really, and it's been part of our history, and it's nothing to do with, I mean, NDC.
Is that not a self-inflicted situation?
Yes, so
that, for example, I'm holding these publications.
Right.
In 2018, August.
Right.
We have immediate past General Secretary of the Christian Council, Reverend Dr. Kwabena Opuni Frimpong, saying government not using taxpayers' money to build National Cathedral.
Right.
Emphatic. Then in 2019, October, you have Archbishop Duncan Williams saying, I don't see why people should fight National Cathedral project when it is not funded by taxpayers.
Exactly.
And now taxpayers' money, as much as 200 million Ghana cedis, beyond what Okudzeto expects will be in excess of $100 million for relocation and all of those things comes in. Don't you think it's self-inflicted?
It is. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, it's right from the beginning. I mean, and I thought, look, the president was very categorical. I mean, actually, that was his first independence speech. We've used the Independence Days. I mean, so there's absolutely no way this could be a private project. Unfortunately, I mean, I think it's just once again, I think, look, people, all of this was new. So there was a certain level at which there was quite some excitement and different. I mean, part of the reason why the Secretariat kept quiet and some of these things is that if we had come out, we'd be contradicting certain figures. So it was almost, sometimes you almost have to retreat. I mean, just for the right moment and now to begin to clarify. Because there was kind of expectation, different people understood it differently. And I thought this, I mean, this idea that this...
Or the Bible's admonishment that you are quick to listen or hear, but slow to speak.
And we've done that. I mean, I've been very frustrated because sometimes I needed to, look, to calm public. But at the same time, if you did, you're almost going to contradict and kind of... And it's part of our politics, and it's whatever politics you're doing. That there's sometimes you just simply says, look, this is a war, okay?
So again, how do you feel as a secretariat or the trustees and directors that Ghanaians, and this is public funds, they have no idea how much of their money will go into it from the government. Personally, I sit here and I keep asking that question. So what is it? Is it that we are planning as we go on? We are not sure, but I should know ahead of time.
Yeah, ideally, yes. I think, look, for me, when this project was given, it was okay. And I saw Bright talking about what cathedrals are used for. These are historic. So every project has to be situated in its context. So the first question I asked, look, what should be the role of a national cathedral in a secular democracy whose majority citizens are religious? You have to. So it was really, the project was first and foremost almost an intellectual project. That, okay, so the president wants a national cathedral for the country. We operate a secular constitution. So how do you then make that national cathedral relevant in both legally and others, but in a country also whose citizens, both historically, aspirationally, are almost acutely religious? So then you begin to say, look, part of doing that...
And to be blunt, you want to say 70% Christian.
And yes, and the Supreme Court says between Christians and Muslims, almost 90%. I mean, from the Abrahamic faiths. So then the issue really then becomes, how do you ensure that this national cathedral really becomes relevant? It's contextualized. Okay, at a point in time, it was just a religious thing. In our case, and so that's how we began to add all these other things. To say that, look, to really get the state involved in a secular democracy, in a religious project like this, we almost have to reconceptualize it and put it almost in the ordinary language of nation building. And to do that, you needed to add all these things we've added. Bible Museum, biblical gardens. So one, it begins to then address the relevance for this 90% Christians, but also to say, look, how can we then use this infrastructure as a means to transform our society?
You meant to say 70% Christians rather than 90% Christians?
No, I didn't say 90%, but I said of the Abrahamic faiths.
Okay,
Because
Abrahamic faiths.
The Bible, actually, I mean, if you go to the Bible Museum, in fact, just last week, there was an interesting lecture at the Museum of the Bible on the Bible and the Quran. See, because there's so much affinity that if you come to the museum, I mean, if you take the Quran, 70%, about 60, I think they say, is almost derived from the Bible, because they are all from Abraham. And so as part of what will be in the museum, actually it will be relevant almost all Ghanaians.
So my question was, how does it feel for you and all your leaders?
Yes, I was coming to that.
That you don't know the state's commitment in exact amounts?
I think it will come out, I mean, because it's an ongoing process. I mean, so for instance, Honorable Ablako says we are not clean with the state's commitment. We said the land and its preparation. You see, when we say the land, it's a category. So that category also means if any building was broken, there has to be compensation. So that's why we didn't say just the land. The land and its preparation is a category, an all-encompassing category that includes that.
But preparing land, that's not, that's
you can't prepare,
from compensation.
But you see, when someone says, I'll give you land and prepare it for construction, you take it for granted that all those elements are included. I mean, really. I mean, and I'm not. I don't want to trivialize what you're doing.
I know you may
but
have a difficulty.
Of those discussions.
You have a difficulty, but I cannot tell how exactly you respond. But I have to ask it. You were with the finance minister on the GTV program.
Exactly.
When he was asked the question about lack of parliamentary approval, his response is what you said a while ago about we will be told in due course, sort of. Are you happy about that?
See, I think what he wanted to establish, that there's really not been an agenda to say we want to disrespect Parliament. I mean, I really think that is very critical, Samson. I mean, really, that there's not been a grand agenda.
But he's breaching the Constitution. You don't spend before you go and ask permission.
That's what he was saying. He was saying, that's what I'm saying, look, this has to be resolved between them. He was saying that, look, I mentioned seed money to Parliament. I mean, so this idea that I spent without indicating that the government will spend on the cathedral is not true. I did tell Parliament, are there procedures that lead to disbursement? Okay, that's a different set of issues.
No, but Parliament doesn't approve seed money in the vacuum.
No.
It has to be specific.
I understand that. But what I'm saying is that the idea that somehow, the government is giving money to the cathedral without Parliament even knowing that the government had planned to give money. I mean, there's a conceptual issue here. And he says, look, we came to Parliament to say that, look, this will be the role of the state in the National Cathedral project. And I remember when they were preparing the minister for chieftaincy, but I normally give them, everybody has to give their briefing.
When you were vetting him.
Yes, normally they ask you, look, you said briefings to him. And one of the things I did was how much the state had given to the Cathedral project. And it was actually asked in Parliament. And he says, look, the state had given $25 million. So I think it's for us, the Secretariat, it's really this issue that somehow there's a grand agenda to deceive the nation.
But elsewhere, this conduct, we are told, can collapse an entire government.
You see,
not just the minister being sacked.
You see, those are the things that I think, look, this will be resolved between Parliament and the Executive. I think the Finance Minister was very humble. It says, look.
The questions that Bryce Simmons raised, what do you say? He says he takes the architectural design work. If this man was coming from England or from the UK, he will be entitled to something not more than 3% of the cost. In Ghana, the professional fees are set out by the profession would have been not more than 4% of the cost.
Right.
But here he is earning 10% of the cost. How does it feel for you?
I think, look, these are issues that were discussed. I mean, the Attorney General was involved, PPA, other questions of percentages, they can be addressed. But I think in all the discussions, so once again, procedural issues, percentages and everything, absolutely, they are subjects for discussion, they can be discussed. But I think for me, what is lost in this is really this idea of then, you see, using that as the building block to then almost trivialize the role of this architect. I mean, I remember some of the discussions I've had on the National Cathedral project, like this museum. I mean, this is the leading museum. I remember when I went there. I mean, it's almost like, who is this guy? I mean, these are, I mean, billion-dollar projects, really. When I went there, when I mentioned the name of the architect, I mean, immediately they said, look, okay, Ghana is a serious country. I mean, because the same architect had built the National Museum of African American, he had designed it. The contractors who built that museum are the same contractors who built the Museum of the Bible. In fact, so I remember the first time I went, the senior vice president of the construction company, Clark's, Brian Frege, was there. I mean, when they just, so sometimes I do understand, I mean, in a country where we have so much, that when you hear some of these figures, but what normally, and I'm not, David can defend himself, the government can defend the contract for him, but there's something that gets lost, that sometimes you attract some of these names. I mean, when David came here alone, I mean, look at the number of people who've come, including Dave Chappelle. And says, look, I want him to build a house for me in Ghana. Look, even the house you build for him, even cover the cost of his design. But he attracts, there are people like him who almost help to, and sorry for my use of the word again, elevate whole industries because of their presence. David is one of those. And as
I'll be sincere with you that I'll be sincere with you that as listening to you, I can tell the feedback I'm getting from our viewers and listeners that there are things that you should be taking seriously. You don't seem to want to give them serious attention, but you are looking at the religious moral questions rather than the questions of accountability and transparency,
what I'm saying
which are very serious.
They're very serious. That's why I started by saying we should not trivialize those. You see, but those are not issues we can resolve on Newsfile. There are institutions that are responsible for that. I really think, so what should a program like Newsfile do? The issues of accountability are so critical. I mean, to the whole transformation of our country, the survival of our democracy. But those issues are not resolved on Newsfile. There are institutions that are there. So that's why the finance minister was saying that, look, Parliament will call them to answer. I mean, and I think we really, because if we don't do that, what we do is that you end up almost incensing the nation. I mean, tensions are really, and I think for me, the key issue is that we should be careful not to fall under a certain threshold.
When you hear government spokespersons, including the national chairman of the NPP, say that Okafor Didi, and you hear a member of the trustees say that, well, David built a house for God when there was difficulty. How does that, make you feel?
Look,
I don't know, but I feel really terrible about that.
I think there's political communication. I think I mean, that's why I'm saying that, look, I was hoping with this 7-page that will begin to rationalize the conversations. And so when I talk about elevation, I'm not saying that, because I think that some of them, in the midst of when you feel like you're being attacked, the normal reaction, the default reaction is kind of you defend. But I think we've come to a stage where we can begin the process of rationalizing the discussions. And that begins by saying that, look, what Honorable Ablakwa and others are raising are critical issues. I mean, and I want to state it here, the accountability issues are so critical. We are not.
So are you setting?
All I'm saying.
Are you setting at the point of your statement when you talk about the partnership,
right,
with the church in Ghana and in the diaspora?
Right.
Are you setting of the state's involvement? When does it terminate?
It's a national. You see, that's what I wanted to start with. The National Cathedral is a national monument. It's a state monument. In fact, and I think that's part of, I was saying that I think one of the things the president did, and he's not gotten credit for, is to say that, look, for a national monument, I really want us to build it in partnership with those who might have, disproportionate use of this monument. So actually, it is a state monument. And he's saying, look, the church has always been an active participant in our transformation and development. Will the churches who will almost make more use of this help in developing this? So it's not the other way around.
So the government actors, including the president, are miscommunicating to us. They should be telling the citizens that you are funding this project. It is not land and preparatory state.
It's not seed money.
You see, the president says, I'm proposing a partnership for this. This is a national project. But I want to do this in partnership. And so we have to sit back and say, look, to really bring clarity to the partnership, you have to define the roles of the two partners. And for me, and so that operationalization was my role. It says, look, how do we make sure that we clearly define the state's role in this? In the partnership to build it. Yeah. So then it becomes, look, first is the architect who had already been appointed. And that's, for me, I know that it's part of we run a Republican democracy. Some of you know that. And that means practically that every 4 years, in our case, we almost give our power to dream to one person. I mean, that's all really the whole notion of a Republican democracy.
It is not an unchecked power.
Exactly.
That's why Parliament is there, and that's the concern of many.
But what I'm saying is
that when the minister says land preparatory phase,
right,
seed money for preparatory state, and the citizens cannot know ahead of time,
right,
and you in charge of this and behind this you put your everything into it,
right,
you can't even tell where that terminates.
No, we can't. I mean, what I'm saying is that, look, even for the Bible Museum, May 4th, just this May 4th, where we met the technical team that way, that's when they actually finished all the concepts. So now if you say, look, this is coming here, you know exactly what is coming there. And so then now you know all the costs. So people think we are literally hiding from, it's been an ongoing process, because we have since, look, how do we ensure that a project of this nature, and I'll be coming back to Bright's questions about whether we can attract the kind of tourists we think we can attract. When you're doing it, you want to make sure that, look, we've included all the elements that we believe would allow us to attract the kind of traffic needed here. And so it's taking quite some time to arrive at those. So it's only, I'll say, May 4th, we had our last meeting, for that, and then they will give us their cost. Then you have the full cost.
Right.
And I think the conversation then should be, for instance, what should be the state's role when it says seed money? What is the total cost, and what should be the state's contribution to that total cost?
Okay. I'm being told to take a break here, but before I do that, can we have an idea the contribution of the church so far, because it's a partnership you're working with?
We're in my
statement.
We said that there will be a press conference on June 27th, where everything. But every month, by the way, every month, we send the contributions to the church leaders, all the church leaders, every month, that, look, this is how much is coming from the churches. And so we want this to be a more comprehensive submission on June 21st, so that the trustees themselves will present it to the nation.
Okay, I'll take a quick break here and return. This is Newsfile, is your most authoritative news analysis platform. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. My guest that I've been interacting with so far on the Cathedral, Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah, Executive Director, National Cathedral Secretariat. You are now within the presidency.
Yeah, the Secretariat is within the presidency.
Okay.
To stress the national character of the project.
Right. What I mean is that you are within the presidency as a presidential staffer, so to
okay,
speak.
yes.
Okay, so
yes.
So also Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, MP North Tongue and Ranking Member, Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament. You heard Bryce Simmons earlier. We have very limited time, unfortunately. Let me go to Professor Bokwing. Professor Bokwing, what would you have to say, having listened to Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah and the rest of our guests on this National Cathedral matters?
Yes, thank you very much, Samson. And I think it's unfortunate what we are hearing and developments after this whole National Cathedral. And I think government is to be blamed in terms of its conduct, which is almost bringing into discussion again whether it was necessary at all to even start this. Because then it tells you that we have not made progress, okay? Because we are still spending a lot of time talking about whether it was necessary and all of this. And it's the things that we had gotten over that we felt that we needed to move on as a country. And we are at this point again simply because of government's own posture, management of information, and the whole procurement. They've turned the whole thing into a procurement economy, centralized, with a certain motive that is very difficult to associate with as an independent, as an objective person, as an ordinary Ghanaian. And I think that is not good. So if you look at this whole thing, you see that the management and the lack of disclosure and look, there were a lot of things that I had stated I was going to share this morning. But then when I read a statement from the Secretariat, it moderated me a bit. And the question was, why that delay and all of that? Okay, so there are other things that perhaps on whether God will live there or will even look in that direction or will be happy or so. I haven't received any testimony from God or WhatsApp from God to make any pronouncement on that and all of that. But I believe that's something that could have united us as a country. Okay, just because of the conduct and operationalization that tends to lend credence to a certain widespread perception about this whole government, tends to create needless confusion and all of that. And so if you are doing something like this in such a polarized environment, you are looking at the management, the posture, and the direction that builds ownership and consensus going forward. I think that should be the drive. And so far, the way government has approached this whole thing from the procurement perspective, from the management of the secretariat, the trustees, and all of that, really tends to contradict whether this whole thing is to place the churches at the center of it, or really is that, okay, let's use the churches as the fronting of it, but this is really our real intention. And all. I think all of these things, I don't know, I think that it's hurting. I have a soft side, I must admit, towards the National Cathedral, and I will not hide that. Okay, but the way government is going about it and all of that really is hurting me to some extent. Okay. Because I believe that what is the role of the churches so far? We need that clarification from the one as to where we are now. Because I believe that the churches, if they saw the need that this would unite us and all of that, are capable of funding this.
Unfortunate that we have run out of time on this. Yes, Mr. Blakwa, if you can do a minute, we have just run out of time. Yes,
very quickly. I would have thought that the statement will have provided a breakdown. The 200 million Ghana cedis, what has it been used for so far? Especially as you admit, you confirm what we put out, that the work on the project has stalled. And I have here a copy of the letter that Ribade sent out to its staff terminating the agreement with them, over 200 workers, saying that for lack of payment from the National Cathedral Secretariat. So where has the money gone to? It's not gone into the compensation of the victims of demolition.
We do a very comprehensive.
And so we'll need that breakdown.
I think
and then design.
He says they will do that. You do that on the 4th.
Yeah, but even the breakdown.
And then design. I see some inconsistency and contradiction. In one breath, you say the office of the president has paid for all design, paragraph 9. Then when you come to paragraph 11, you say that the $25 million you received, portion of it was used for design of the integration of a Bible museum.
That's a different thing.
So how much are we spending on design alone? That would even go beyond 10%. And you see, for projects of this caliber, we don't spend so much on just design. Then duration. Why are you rushing to complete this by 2024 when you know that all over the world, Washington National Cathedral built in 82 years, Cologne Cathedral 74 years, Notre Dame Cathedral 26 years.
And you must emphasize, you hear even government people say Washington National Cathedral, they say it is for the state.
No, it's not for the state.
No. I think that's the things I wanted to.
The Milan Cathedral, 579 years. So these are iconic projects that you take time. And
I'm sorry, but we have run out of time. We have run out of time.
Other priority issues.
Thank you, Sami. What would you say finally in 30 seconds? 30 seconds. Yes.
I mean, I think this, once again, like I started my letter with, that really this represents a unique moment for this country. Can we rationalize the discussion like Professor Bokpin says? This is a project that can unite this country. I mean, we live in a very, very, very polarized political environment, a denominationalized church landscape. Let's begin to use this National Cathedral as the moment to almost elevate our national conversations and really begin to look at what this represents for us. The Secretariat is beginning to organize a series of consultations on this issue because that's what we realize, that look, there's a whole misconception that is out there about the National Cathedral and whether it's the state that owns. It's contextual. In no way the state that owns the
Which you agree is self-inflicted because you originated it.
Yeah. I mean, in no way it is the state that owns the cathedral. In France and Co. at the time, it was a state church. I mean, so there's a whole thing. What do you do in hours where you don't have one dominant church? These are fascinating things that I think all of us can.
Somebody got really angry, sent a message, says, if Kenufureta is saying it will fetch us money, he should let Databank find money and build it because they will make money.
I mean, those are the things I'm saying that let's elevate the discussions. Look, what we have done, really, just last week, I was in Israel to look at the artifacts. He was talking about artifacts. Bright was talking about artifacts. Yeah. National cathedrals, really, they are really based on the reputations, on the architect and the internal everything, and programming. And that's
thank you very much. It does look like we need a whole program dedicated to give a lot more light on these matters. Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah is Executive Director, National Cathedral Secretariat. Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa is MP North Tongue and Ranking Member, Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament. Godfred Bokpin is Professor of Finance and Economics, University of Ghana. Bright Simmons, Honorary Vice President of Imani Africa. Stephen Amwa joined us in the first segment, who is Dr. Stephen Amwa, MP in Shaiso and Member Finance Committee of Parliament. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini, and my outfit, as always, is by Habil's Couture. You can call them 0200 84 1988. Have a good afternoon.